On a nameless plain of Palestine, the world held its breath. Dust rose like ghosts from. Listen to the drum. Feel the rains bite into leathered palms. Smell the cold sweetness of the springs that keep armies alive. Today, speed meets discipline. They came like a storm from the end of the earth, names whispered from Kiev to Damascus Mongols. Villages burned cities, folded kings. Hooves hammer stone. A horn splits the morning. Somewhere an officer's eyes flicker. Not fear, not yet something rarer, the first shadow of doubt. The world asks a single question: can the unstoppable be stopped? Hold your breath. The answer begins here. After Baghdad fell and the Abbasid Caliphate snapped like a dry reed, a new shadow moved down the Levant. Kitbuqa, iron-willed general of Hulagu, rode with banners stiff in desert wind, his scouts tasting the dust of Damascus, his messengers naming the next springs, the next towns, the next surrender. Behind him lay libraries drowned in silence and walls that remembered fire. Before him, the road to Egypt. Egypt was not merely a prize, it was a gate. Behind that gate stood a brotherhood wired into bone. The Mamluk soldiers bought. Letters crossed the sand like arrows. Parley failed as it was meant to, so iron would answer iron. Look at the map the way a horse sees it: ridges that hide gullies that funnel a throat of land where speed loses its breath. Ain Jalut, the spring of Goliath. Water close to the surface, grass enough for hooves, stone enough to cage them. Kitbuqa trusted what had never failed, the whip-fast feint. Because the Mamluks were not a city, they were a shape memory returns to a line that bends, then bites. They measured the valley. They counted the beats between horns. They taught their horses to stand still, while fear tried to move their knees. Qutuz raised a nation with his voice. He promised that Egypt would not be a page torn from a book, it would be the spine that held the story together. Baibars planned something quieter, a path of retreat that was not retreat. Between both camps walked rumors that the great Khan in the Far East had died, that Hulagu had dawn bled into the hills. The Mamluk vanguard moved like a low cloud drifting backward on purpose. Arrows wrote impatient lines across the sky. The springs of Ain Jalut breathed in the cool. This was not a clash of tribes, it was a test of ideas. Can terror outrun discipline? Can speed outmaneuver a place designed by stone and time? The board was set, Kitbuqa's riders eager and sure, Qutuz steady at the hinge. Baibars quiet where the valley narrows to a fist. Listen closely. The ground is choosing a language. Soon steel. Baibars let the point bend. His vanguard fought, yielded, fought again, a tide that never truly broke. Kitbuqa read the sign as he always had an enemy losing heart. He pushed. Trumpets climbed. Dust thickened into weather. Standards flickered and vanished in it. Commands became gestures, then guesses. Ain Jalut's springs breathed cool on the Mamluk line bowed. Not a rout, a patient curve, a bowstring drawn deeper. Arrows rattled on lamellar shields, rang gaps opened, and were stitched shut by riders arriving exactly on time. Baibars drifted backward, showing his back just long enough to be convincing. He let anger do what orders could not. Mongol units, Qutuz watched from the hinge itself, visor up, eyes steady. Kitbuqa chose speed. He sent weight into the center and snapped riders toward the Mamluk left where the water glimmered behind reeds. A kill worth 2 victories. The Mamluk left flexed hard, then thinned, then seemed to fray. Screams, real ones now. A banner lurched and dipped. Horses shied from the damp bank, a line of shields wavered. Now said the valley, but not to him. Baibars gave a signal no larger than a bird's wing. His retreat slid into a crease between low ridges and Kitbuqa pressed, the mouth closed. From the scrub on both sides, shapes rose like a second horizon. Heavy lancers, fresh and silent, their spear points already aligned with ribs they had measured. A horn changed pitch, not many notes. The Mamluk center, which had been bending, straightened on that sound. The curve became a line, then the anvil. The flanks moved. Not wild, not loud, inevitable. Steel met speed in a place with no space. At the springs, the fray knit itself into a wedge and drove forward, not back. A shield boss punched a rider from his saddle. A mace ended the sentence. Arrows still flew, but their lines were short and panicked. Qutuz's banner moved once, like a breath. He rode into the hinge he had held, and men took that motion like a promise. The promise turned into pressure. The pressure turned into push. Kitbuqa fought his way to the front, as he always did, where the air is most honest. He saw what good commanders see when a plan is wrong. A rider near him shouted that the left needed air. Another said the right had found stone. A third said nothing. He was looking at the center and understood. Baibars reappeared, not where he had vanished, but where the last hope of turning lay. His horse hit like an oath kept. The dust changed again, not a veil now, but weight. Standards leaned the way grass leans when weather turns. Trumpets spoke in shorter phrases. Orders shrank to the size of a man's hands. For a heartbeat that felt like an era, both armies hung between outcomes. One more arrow's worth of space. They did not get it. The valley patient all morning finished its sentence. The horn changed, and with it the air. From both ridges fresh lances fell like Qutuz dropped his visor then, so the riders swear threw it back and tore the veil from his face. He stood in the stirrups and shouted a single word that needed no translator. The line answered with metal. Baibars' wedge struck where breath still lived. Not a charge that spends itself, but a driving nail and hold twist. His horse shouldered a gap, opened the men behind him, made the gap permanent. The valley offered. Kitbuqa rode into the thinnest place as if thinness could be bullied into thickness. He fought the way standards dipped, lifted, dipped again. Trumpets shortened their vocabulary. Commands became names shouted into dust. At the springs where Mongol arrows had meant to starve the enemy of water, Mamluk shields locked and stepped and locked until the bank itself seemed to move. A rider reached for the water and found a spear instead. The first break was not spectacular. No cliff, no avalanche. Just a seam running through flesh and fear. Baibars saw it. He angled his wedge not to chase, but to seal. The path vanished. Choice turned to crush. Qutuz pressed the hinge like a smith's hammer. Every push won a breath. Every breath won a yard. Every yard won the confidence to take the next. Where the step bow had written whole chapters, the lance now wrote periods. Kitbuqa's guard folded down to names and faces. He tried the left met stone. He tried the right met men who had waited all morning for that exact He reared his horse as if height could change math. For a heartbeat, the dust painted him taller than truth. Then the Mongol line, taught to flex and flow, finally met a shape that refused to behave like water. It met a shape that held. The noise changed key from many small endings to one long one, the kind of sound that makes ravens lift from rocks. When it ended the way battles do, when edges go dull, not with a shout, but with the absence of one. Banners listing hooves, slowing men discovering how loud breathing can be. Ain Jalut's throat emptied of speed. Discipline remained standing where it had chosen to stand since dawn, and the steppe wind, which had spent a generation telling the world one story, paused as if listening for a new. Egypt still stood. The road to Cairo did not open, it closed, and they would fight again in other places, under other skies. But something old had cracked the superstition that speed alone is destiny. On this ground, discipline outlasted terror. On this morning, terrain argued louder than reputation. On this page, men who had Qutuz gathered a nation with a lifted hand. Baibars counted the living, honored the dead, and measured the work still to come. Their soldiers, mud to the knee, sweat salted white on lamellar, stood in a silence made of relief and disbelief, as if far-off rumors kept walking of a dead great Khan of thrones contested of armies recalled. But those are winds from another horizon. Here the present had weight. Remember this: shape a line that bends, then bites a feint that is not flight a spring, that keeps courage cold. Battles are decided by men, yes, but also by places that teach men how to stand. If the echoes of Ain Jalut found you today, carry them. That inevitability is a story we tell until someone writes another. That speed needs room and courage needs measure. That even the loudest empire must listen to the ground. Power fades, empires fall, but the stories never die. If you want more moments where history turns on a breath, subscribe to Echoes of History.